If you have ever lived like this, where nothing catastrophic is happening outside, and yet inside you cannot find peace, then do not be too quick to blame the world. A message with the wrong tone can stay with you all night. A look, a sentence, a small rejection, a moment of being ignored can expand inside your mind until it feels larger than the event itself. A lot of people are not being tortured by life. A lot of people are being tortured by the judge in their own head. Ethan discovered this during the winter of Grey Tower City. It was a large city, bright and cold, full of suspended glass walkways and floating signs that moved through the night, like manufactured stars. Everyone there was running to prove themselves, running to stay ahead, running to make sure they did not look like one of the ones who had lost. Ethan was no different. He believed what the city believed, that if he earned a little more, rose a little higher, and collected a little more recognition, his life would finally become quiet. But the opposite kept happening. The more he climbed, the louder his mind became. The more he tried to control everything, the harder it became to sleep. The more he tried to think his way out of pain, the tighter the pain wrapped around him. He had always trusted his mind. He read constantly. He understood systems. He could explain other people's motives, his own motives, the structure of power, the psychology of fear. He thought if he became smart enough, he would eventually solve suffering, the way a good engineer solves a broken design. He did not know that every attempt to escape with thought was helping the prison become stronger. The thing that finally cracked him was not dramatic. It was a letter. One morning, he received a message from the upper council. It was short, only a few cold corrections. Nothing theatrical, nothing openly cruel. To someone else, it might have been unpleasant, then forgotten. Not to Ethan. He sat by the window and read it again and again. Every line became a needle. His mind began to expand the meaning. They do not respect me. They think I am not enough. They already know I am not as solid as I appear. By evening, the letter was no longer a letter. It had become a trial. He lay in bed, arguing with invisible voices. He rewrote his responses, defended himself, explained himself, tried to prove his worth to people who were not even in the room. The more he argued, the more exhausted he became. 3 days later, he left the city to see an old man who lived by the mist lake. People called the old man the keeper of the lamp. At dusk, he lit a small lantern by the water, as if he were waiting for someone or guiding something home. Some said he had once lived in the city too. Others said he had been brilliant. And then one day, he stopped using brilliance as a weapon against himself. Ethan did not usually trust this kind of person, but he was too tired to keep distrusting everyone. The keeper saw him, poured him a cup of hot water, and asked only one question. "Have you been hurting lately?" Ethan nodded. The keeper asked another. "Is the event hurting you, or is your mind's story about the event hurting you?" The question cut more deeply than the letter ever had. Ethan almost said, "Of course it is the event." But then he remembered the letter. The first impact had been brief. The rest of it, the replaying, the imaginary courtroom, the shame, the self-defense, the hours of internal argument, all of that had been added by him. The keeper looked at the lake and said, "What comes from the world is often only a stone. What drowns you is the wave your mind raises around it." That evening, the keeper did not teach him how to become stronger. He did not hand him a philosophy. He led Ethan instead to an abandoned tower behind the house. It had once been a place of judgment, Inside, the structure was still visible. The high stone seat, the cold benches, the architecture of punishment. It felt like a room built for someone unseen, to sit above everyone else and declare what was right, wrong, worthy, or condemned. The keeper stood at the doorway and said, "Do you know why you are in so much pain? Because you keep living inside this tower. There is a judge inside your mind. Every event enters, and the judge immediately divides it. Right or wrong, respect or insult, win or loss, safe or threatening, proof or humiliation. It judges everything. And as long as it keeps judging, you keep serving the sentence." Ethan looked at the ruined court and felt something tighten in his chest, because he knew this was not a metaphor. This was his daily life. A word came in, judgment. A silence came in, judgment. A mistake, judgment. A delay, judgment. A comparison, judgment. He had thought he was thinking, but most of the time, he had only been living under constant trial. The keeper picked up a small stone and dropped it into the lake. Ripples moved outward, then faded. "Each thought is like that," he said. "It appears, it disturbs the surface, then it can pass. But you do not watch the ripple. You jump into the water and begin shouting, 'This ripple should not be here. This means something is wrong. This proves I am not enough. This is dangerous. This is personal.' And that is how a small disturbance becomes a storm." Then the keeper taught him something simple. Not analysis, not positive thinking, not self-correction. A different sentence. Do not say, "I am angry." Do not say, "I am falling apart." Do not say, "I am broken again." Say instead, "I notice that an angry thought has appeared. I notice that fear is moving through me. I notice that a voice inside me is attacking me." The keeper said, "That small shift changes everything." In the first kind of sentence, you become the emotion. In the second kind, you become the one who sees it. At first, Ethan thought it sounded too small, too weak, almost artificial. But that night, he tried it. The letter rose in his mind again. The old courtroom started opening. The old panic started building, and just before it took him, he said inwardly, "I noticed that a fear of being rejected has just appeared in my mind." Something strange happened. The pain did not disappear, but a little space appeared between him and the pain. For the first time, he was not entirely inside the wave. Part of him was standing on the shore. The keeper later told him that awakening is often not a grand event. Sometimes it is only 1 second. 1 second in which you do not immediately become the thought, you only see it. And in that second, your whole life changes direction. You are no longer only the one being dragged around by the mind. You become the one who can watch the mind. But the keeper also warned him that 1 second is not enough by itself, because the jailer is clever. The mind will quickly return with new bait. It will invite you back into analysis, comparison, defense, argument. So he taught Ethan the second step. Return to the body, because your mind can lie, the keeper said, but your breath does not. From that day on, whenever emotion rose, Ethan stopped trying to argue with it first. He returned to breathing, not beautiful breathing, not perfect breathing, just slow breathing. Inhale, exhale. Feel the air touch the nose. Feel the chest fill. Feel the belly rise and fall. The keeper gave him a sentence for it. On the inhale, I am not these thoughts. On the exhale, I am the one who sees them. At first, Ethan could only do this for a few seconds. Then the mind would catch him again. But slowly, a few seconds became 10. 10 became a minute. A minute became a place he could return to. And in those moments, he touched something he had almost never felt before. Not happiness, not achievement, a deep kind of quiet, like not having to enter the courtroom every time a thought made an accusation, like realizing that not every thought deserves belief, and not every pain deserves interpretation. When he eventually returned to Grey Tower City, the city had not changed. The bills were still there. The council was still cold. The glowing lives on the public screens were still glowing. But Ethan was different. A difficult message arrived, and he did not instantly turn it into a sentence against himself. Fear came, and he no longer treated it as the voice of truth. He began to understand that what had been imprisoning him was often not the world itself. It was the judge inside his own mind, whom he had mistaken for reality. Years later, someone asked him what awakening felt like. He thought for a long time. Then he said, "It felt like the light in a room suddenly turning on, and realizing that the monster, which had been tormenting me for years, was often only my own mind, casting a shadow on the wall." This is Otherworld Radio. Real awakening is not making the mind better at analysis. It is finally refusing to treat the mind as your only master. When you walk out of the judgment tower, step back from the thought. Return to the breath. Return to the body. Return to the one who can quietly see. You begin to understand what freedom actually is.